the story is so important. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit of time to talk about how the brain receives stories compared to abstract concept. But the reason why, the number one reason why that I really wanted to use story in the math lessons is Jesus taught in stories. And it put the lessons that he wanted his followers and the people listening to him and us, um, he put them in context. We're not sitting there wondering, why do I have to learn this? You know, I always tell parents, if your kids are asking, why do I have to learn this? It's not being presented in the correct manner. So the stories are there to present the concepts in context. They are, we've heard the expression right brain math, and I will hopefully have time to explain what I mean by that, because there's really no way for um, abstract concepts to actually become part of a child's memory bank in context unless we give it to them in context. They don't have the ability to take an abstract and put it into the correct context at that age. They don't have it. It's not there. And I don't care how smart your kid is. I don't care how good they are at memorizing. They're not going to get the concept and the context correct in their processing. They just won't do it. When I discovered this was a voila moment for me. This was one of those pieces that I'm sitting talking to Dr. Newton and just really just allowing him to download his knowledge into me. If you ever need a real true education, go find an expert who knows a, just an astronomical amount about something and just ask questions and let them download it into you, because that is such an amazing. I probably got an 8-year education from this man in the couple of years that I knew him and sat at his feet. Um, so we were talking about brains and how they function, and just in a nutshell, really what it comes down to is our right brain functions like a parallel processor. Okay, it's all about right now, right here. It's like living in the moment, and it thinks in pictures and learns through sensory information. Okay, so we have all of this information just coming in, and it streams in simultaneously. Okay, so it's all just coming in. All the senses just bringing all that stuff right in there. And so the right brain is really, it's collecting all of the sensory information and then trying to create this huge collage for it. Okay, and then it sends the information over to the left. But here's the thing: children, babies, when they are born, their left hemisphere is almost completely offline. And thank goodness it is, because if it wasn't, we would remember our birthing experience. That would not be a good thing. That would be the end of the human race, because we'd be like, no way am I doing that again, right? So that whole thing of the left brain developing slowly over the first decade of a child's life is so crucial to understanding the developmental levels that a child goes through, and each child goes through it on their own speed, at their own speed, on their own level by level by level. It looks different for every person. But when the left hemisphere actually gets to be online, then we actually have a place to put and store the facts. Okay, so go back to the right side and think about that for a minute. We're taking in information, sensory information. Children learn through play because they're very kinesthetic. They have to, when someone's kinesthetic, what do? They touch it, they feel it, they smell it, sometimes they see it, they hear it. I mean, you're basically wondering, okay, do you need to roll in it? Yes, they do sometimes. That's why little kids move around so much when they're learning. We are always like, man, I wish I had a quarter of their energy. Their energy is going towards taking in information. and their little brains are working so hard and trying to translate the world around them. Okay. So as they're doing this over the years, their brain is building those passageways between the two hemispheres. When we bombard our young students, and I say young, any age elementary, really, boys more than girls, longer than girls. On an average, I just read a study, and on an average, little boys are really, their brains, many of their developmental advances don't actually bring them to the place of being able to read fluently until they're about 10. That's like the average age of reading fluently. Can they read before that? Yes, they can read it, but they're not fluent and they're not comprehending what they're reading. So once that those passageways really, those electrical impulses between the hemispheres actually get developed enough, then that student, that child has the capacity to actually have real long-term memories. And if you think about it, your first memory, how old were you when you had your first, like your first clear memory of your childhood? Like I have epoch memories of when I was like 2.5, but that's very uncommon. And it's not a very clear memory. I just remember getting a really bad splinter. But other than that, I don't have, it's just kind of a fuzziness. That's because our left side, our left hemisphere had not created the place to store it correctly. Okay. So this is where the whole fact, the story and the short lessons all come in. That first level of the educational process is the information taking in process, right? That's where the information all gets in there. When the information goes in as bits and pieces and like data bytes, just little blop, 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 and little pieces of this and that, that's where that child starts getting really, really frustrated because their brain is not capable of making a whole collage that makes sense to them out of what they're getting. So the story delivers it in context. It's a whole picture. It makes sense because it's a sensory experience. Okay. We connect to things so much better when we experience them with our senses, right? As many senses as possible. Our smell and I mean, we could just get into the whole thing about how the brain processes all of those things. We're not going to get into that. But we're just going to say that it is so much better to have this information brought in an enjoyable way that the brain can actually process and then say, hey, makes sense. And it builds those connections so much faster, so much stronger, and actually makes a drawer over here that says, hey, this is multiplication. And division goes right next to it because they go together. And how do I know that? Because it's connected to a story. Okay. So that's really the whole idea behind it is the stories are so important. I hear so many people say, oh, I don't read the stories, but the stories are super important. The stories are the platter that the banquet is served to the student, where they can actually gather it up and it's a whole sandwich. It's not a piece of crust and a piece of meat and a piece of cheese. They have absolutely no idea what to do with. It's the whole thing. They can pick it up, they can eat it. And you know what? It doesn't really matter if they think the stories are corny or not. It really doesn't. The stories are once a week and it puts the stuff in context, especially in those younger ages. So the lessons are short because that meets the student right where they are. Their attention spans are short, their lessons need to be short. As their attention spans grow, their lessons grow. They're getting all the same concepts, all the same content, all the same everything that they need to move on into those upper levels of math, but it's done in a way that will actually make sense and actually have a safe place to be in their brain.